Chapter 1. Arrival. The mountains were already swallowing the light by the time their van pulled off the cracked asphalt road. The air here was sharper, colder, carrying the damp scent of moss and stone. Mist clung low over the tree line, curling around trunks like slow, curious fingers. 5 hours of driving for this, Chris grumbled, tossing his backpack over one shoulder. He was the kind of guy who filled silence with complaints. The others ignored him. Nina stepped out last, tucking her hair into her jacket collar. The air felt heavy, as if it remembered something she didn't. The group, 5 of them in all, were here for a weekend hike, a break from the screens, as Jay, their unofficial leader, liked to call it. He'd found the trail online, buried in a half-forgotten forum. The post was vague, just a grainy photo of trees that gleamed like polished steel. No coordinates, only a hand-drawn map and a caption, "You won't believe your eyes." "Looks normal enough," Leah said, scanning the mist. Her breath came out in pale ribbons. They shouldered their packs and started up the narrow path. It wound between black pines and slick rocks, higher and higher, until the road vanished below. The forest deepened into quiet. No birdsong, no rustling undergrowth. Just their boots crunching frost-bitten earth. "Why's it so quiet?" Nina asked. "Winter's close," Jay said. But his voice didn't sound convinced. By the time they reached the ridge, the light was thin, the sky the color of old bone, and then, without warning, the trees changed. The black trunks gave way to something impossible, tall, slender columns of glass. They rose in perfect stillness, their surfaces catching what little light remained and throwing it back in fractured shards. Nina stepped closer and saw herself reflected, but the image didn't move as she did. It was smiling, her breath caught in her throat. Behind her, Chris swore softly. "What the hell is this place?" Chapter 2. Reflections. They stood frozen, the forest around them humming with an almost electric stillness. Each tree was a mirror, each reflection faintly wrong. Jay touched the surface of the nearest trunk. It was cool, smooth, too perfect to be natural. His reflection blinked a beat slower than him. "Okay, creepy," Leah muttered, stepping back. Chris circled one of the glass trees, his boots crunching frost. "It's like they're watching us." "Trees don't watch people," Jay said, though he didn't sound convinced. Nina stayed quiet, staring at her double. The smile had widened, ever so slightly. She looked down at her hands, her real hands, and then back. In the glass, her reflection's nails were blackened, cracked. She shivered. They pressed deeper into the grove. The air seemed heavier here, like walking underwater. The mist swirled between the trunks, distorting the reflections until they seemed to move on their own. "Guys," Leah's voice trembled. She was staring into a tree across from her. "That's not me." They all turned. The figure in the glass had Leah's face, but older, worn, with dark streaks under her eyes. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming words Leah couldn't hear. Chris laughed nervously. "This is some kind of art project. Hidden cameras or something." No one answered. The deeper they went, the less the reflections matched them at all. Faces aged, eyes changed color, expressions shifted into things no one felt. And somewhere, faintly, Nina thought she heard a voice inside the glass, calling her name. Chapter 3. The first disappearance. The path narrowed as they climbed higher, the glass trees crowding in like silent sentinels. Each trunk reflected not just them, but fragments of impossible possibilities. Jay smiling as if he'd won some unseen prize, Leah crying in a way she couldn't remember, Nina looking over a ledge she'd never found. Chris, ever the skeptic, reached out to touch one of the smoother trunks. His fingers met an icy surface, and for a split second, the glass rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. He jerked back, muttering, That wasn't real. Just a trick of the light." But it wasn't just a trick. Nina saw it too, a shadow crossing behind him in the reflection, moving faster than any human could. She gasped. "Did anyone else see that?" she whispered, clutching her jacket tighter. Leah shook her head. "Stop messing with us," she said, but her voice betrayed her unease. They pressed forward, hearts hammering, until they reached a clearing. And there, impossibly, stood a man ragged, pale, his jacket torn, rock in hand. He pounded at a glass trunk again and again, each hit echoing like brittle metal. "Help me!" he cried, voice raw, shaking. Maya, always the impulsive one, moved toward him. "Hey, are you okay?" But Liam grabbed her arm. "Don't," he warned. Nina followed his gaze. In the glass, the man's reflection wasn't him. The face grinned, perfectly still, eyes black and empty. And when the real man swung the rock again, his reflection remained upright, calm, smiling, as if nothing had happened. Then, with a crack that shattered the quiet, the trunk splintered. The man vanished entirely, leaving nothing but shards and that impossible grinning reflection still embedded in the glass. A cold silence fell over the group. No one spoke. The wind moved differently here, carrying whispers that didn't belong to any of them. Leah swallowed hard. We need to leave. Now." But the forest wasn't finished with them. Even as they turned to flee, they noticed something horrifying. Every trunk they passed now held not only their reflections, but subtle distortions. Eyes slightly too wide, mouths twisted into silent screams, shadows moving where no bodies stood, and behind them, somewhere deep in the mist, a faint tapping began, rhythmic, deliberate, and growing closer. Chapter 4. The Map in the Trees. The group moved cautiously, each footstep sounding louder than the last, echoing against the glass trunks. Every turn they took seemed to lead them deeper, not out, and the mist had thickened, curling around their ankles like grasping fingers. "It's like it's rearranging itself," Leah whispered, her breath trembling in the cold air. "Every path we take leads back here," Nina nodded. "And these reflections? They're changing too. Look." She pointed to a trunk ahead. In its surface, they saw themselves, but not as they were. Their expressions were older, tired, fearful in ways they weren't yet. And in the corner of the reflection, small, etched shapes appeared, faint lines forming paths, trees, and little stick figures. Jay frowned. "What is that?" Leah stepped closer. "It's a map, maybe. The trees are showing us the way." Chris laughed nervously. "A map in a forest of mirrors?" "Yeah, right. What, the trees are trying to give us directions?" "No," Nina said softly, tracing the lines with her fingers. "I think it's more like a warning." They studied the etchings. The lines twisted and overlapped, showing paths they hadn't taken and figures they didn't recognize. Some circled, some crossed out. One cluster even matched their own group, 5 stick figures standing together. But in another section, only 4 figures remained. The realization hit them all at once. The forest had already claimed someone, and it was keeping track. The tapping grew louder behind them. Turning around, they saw nothing, only the mist and rows of mirrored trunks. But the reflections in the trees now showed movement that didn't belong. Shadows passing behind them, figures stretching toward them with silent intent. Jay swallowed hard. "We have to stick together. Follow the map." The etched paths guided them reluctantly, forcing them through narrow corridors of glass that bent light and distorted their surroundings. With every step, the reflections seemed to anticipate their movements, adjusting slightly, always one beat ahead. Chris muttered, "This place, it's alive. It knows us." A sudden crack made them all jump. One of the trunks split, a jagged fissure running through the glass. In its center, they saw a face familiar yet impossibly wrong. It was Mark, grinning silently, eyes dark and unblinking. And then, in an instant, the image shifted. The Mark in the glass stepped forward, his reflection moving independently from the real Mark, who wasn't there anymore. Leah screamed. "It's taking people." The group froze, realizing that the forest didn't just reflect them, it was replacing them, learning them, and deciding who stayed and who vanished next. Chapter 5. The First Taken. The air had grown heavier, each breath a laborious task. Mist clung to their clothes and hair, and the glass trunks around them seemed to pulse faintly, as if breathing in unison with the forest itself. "Keep moving!" Jay barked, trying to rally the group, but his voice sounded hollow, swallowed almost immediately by the oppressive silence. They advanced cautiously, following the etched paths on the nearest trunks. Every now and then, a reflection would twitch unnaturally, a hand raised slightly before the real person moved, a head turning in a way that didn't match reality. Mark, who had been lagging behind, froze suddenly. His eyes were locked on a tall, flawless glass trunk. The others didn't notice at first, preoccupied with their own reflections and the path ahead. "Mark?" Leah called. No response. Nina caught up and saw it. Mark had pressed both hands to the surface of the tree. The glass rippled under his palms, like water disturbed by a pebble. His reflection looked back at them, grinning, but it wasn't grinning the way he usually did. Its eyes were dark, unreadable, and fixed in a sinister stare. "Don't touch it!" Jay shouted, but it was too late. The reflection stepped forward, and in the same instant, Mark's body stiffened. His lips parted in a silent scream. His fingers clawed at the glass, and then he was gone. Only Chapter 9. Lost among reflections. The fog had become suffocating, curling around their bodies like living tendrils. Every step they took was mirrored, but not faithfully. The glass trees now twisted and bent, showing alternate versions of themselves, exhausted, broken, screaming in silence. Chris lagged behind, muttering curses under his breath. I can't do this anymore." Nina grabbed his arm. "We have to keep moving, don't look back." But it was impossible. Behind them, reflections moved independently, stepping out from the trunks, gliding toward the group with an unnerving calm. Leah's reflection reached for her, fingers stretching impossibly long. A mocking grin plastered across a face that should have been her own. Jay shouted, trying to herd everyone forward. "Stick together! Don't let it split us up!" For a moment, it seemed to work. But then Maya stumbled over a root, and as she fell, a glass trunk nearby cracked. From the fissure, a figure stepped out, a perfect copy of Maya, but her eyes were hollow, her grin cruel and inhuman. "No! No!" Maya screamed, scrambling back. She reached for Nina, but the reflection lunged first, faster than any human could move. In one fluid, terrifying motion, it grabbed her wrist, and then she was gone. The forest swallowed her scream, leaving nothing behind but a still reflection trapped in the glass, smiling eternally. The group froze, paralyzed by horror. Leah shook, tears streaming down her face. It took her, like Mark." Jay clenched his fists. "We have to keep moving. Now, if we stay, it'll get the rest of us." Nina looked at the reflections. They weren't just copies, they were predators, learning, imitating, perfecting themselves to replace the originals. The forest had become a hunting ground, each reflection a lethal echo of their worst fears. The ground trembled beneath them. The fog thickened further, obscuring paths and twisting the trunks into impossible angles. Every sound, each breath, each footstep was amplified, distorted. Voices called from every direction, overlapping, crying, mocking, whispering names. Leah sobbed, clutching Jay's arm. "How do we survive this?" Jay's eyes were hard, determined. "We follow the map in the trunks. That's the only way out. Don't stop, no matter what you see." But Nina knew, with a sinking, icy certainty, that the forest had already decided some of them would never leave. Each passing second was another step toward replacement, another chance for the reflections to learn, to perfect themselves, to claim more victims. The forest waited silently, patiently, as the group pressed forward, knowing it had already taken enough. Chapter 10. The Forest's Will. The fog had become almost tangible, wrapping around their bodies like a living cage. Every breath tasted like iron. Every heartbeat reverberated against unseen walls. The forest had stopped being a place of trees. It was a sentient presence, watching, calculating, shaping the world to its whims. Jay led the group cautiously, each step guided by the etched lines in the glass trunks. But even the map seemed to shift beneath their gaze, lines rearranging, paths disappearing before their eyes. This isn't natural," Leah whispered, voice quivering. "It's alive, all of it, the whole forest." Nina nodded grimly, eyes scanning the reflections. The doubles had multiplied. They didn't just mimic now, they reached out from the glass, emerging into the fog, moving faster, reacting before anyone could. A sudden crack echoed nearby. A trunk split, and from the center emerged Mark's copy, grinning, eyes black and hollow. It reached for Jay with unnatural speed, moving like liquid over the frozen earth. "Get back!" Jay shouted, swinging his backpack at the figure. But it flowed around him, circling, anticipating, a predator perfected by the forest itself. The mist thickened further, wrapping their legs, tugging at their jackets, muffling their screams. And then they saw it, a single trunk larger than any they had passed, its surface smooth, flawless, reflecting not the world around them, but something else entirely. Their fears amplified, twisted, and alive. "It's showing us, Nina whispered, stepping closer. "Everything we fear, everything we could become if it takes us." Leah shook her head, sobbing. I don't want to see, the forest responded, bending reality. Paths twisted impossibly, trunks curved over themselves, reflecting scenes that hadn't happened or maybe would happen. Shadows flickered, not bound to anyone's movement, and whispers rose, not in their voices but in words they had never spoken. Jay grabbed Nina's hand. "We move now, no hesitation. Follow me." But as they ran, the reflection in the massive trunk shifted. Their own faces stared back, grinning with mouths too wide, eyes too dark. And then, slowly, deliberately, the forest seemed to lean forward, pressing its will down on them, bending the fog, warping the air, reshaping the path so every step led deeper into its heart. Nina realized, with a chill that froze her blood, that they were no longer choosing their path. The forest was choosing for them. Every breath, every heartbeat, every twitch of muscle had already been anticipated. And somewhere, deep in the fog, a low, resonant hum began, not a sound of wind or trees, but of intent. It was the forest speaking without words, declaring ownership, signaling the final act of the hunt. They ran, but the forest already knew how it would end. Chapter 11. Shattered Boundaries. The air was suffocating, thick with mist and the metallic scent of glass. Every step forward felt heavier, as if gravity itself had been rewritten by the forest. The trunks loomed impossibly tall, bending in ways that defied logic, reflecting not just the group but fragments of other impossible realities. We're losing it," Leah whispered, voice trembling. Her eyes darted between her reflection and the path ahead. The reflection no longer mirrored her movements. Instead, it acted on its own, leaning forward with a grin that split her stomach with fear. Nina felt the ground shift beneath her feet. One moment she was stepping forward. The next, she stumbled into a corridor that hadn't been there before. "It's rewriting the space," she gasped. "Every step we take, it changes everything." Chris, pale and shaking, looked into a trunk nearby. His reflection moved independently, smiling in a way he had never smiled. Slowly, it reached out its hand toward him. Chris froze, the forest pressing down on him, the mist wrapping his legs like chains. "Run!" Jay shouted, grabbing both Leah and Nina. "Don't let it separate us!" But the forest had other ideas. Trunks split open spontaneously, releasing doubles that moved fluidly, sliding over the ground like shadows given form. They mimicked the group's actions perfectly except for one thing. They were faster, stronger, and utterly merciless. Leah screamed as a figure that was her lunged, dragging her toward a trunk that shimmered like liquid silver. Nina grabbed her arm, yanking her back, but the reflection's hand closed on empty air, smiling as if it had already won. The path twisted. The forest's will became a physical force. Trunks pressed in from all sides. Fog thickened to suffocating density, and the whispers rose into a deafening chorus. Each reflection spoke, moving independently, repeating fears, secrets, and lies, every word designed to disorient, to paralyze, to separate them. We're trapped in its mind," Nina shouted, panic cracking her voice. "It's controlling everything. The paths, the reflections, even time." Jay's eyes were wide, frantic but sharp. "We have one chance. Follow me straight through the center. Don't look, don't hesitate, move." They sprinted, hearts hammering, fog and reflections twisting, shapes bending impossibly, doubles pursuing, cornering, mocking. Each step forward felt like wading deeper into the forest's consciousness, where the very laws of physics were rewritten to trap them, distort them, and, ultimately, claim them. And at the center of this chaos, a single realization struck. The forest was not just alive, it was omniscient. It had already learned everything about them. Every fear, every hesitation, every flicker of doubt was being used against them. The final confrontation was imminent, and the forest waited with infinite patience, ready to enforce its ultimate will. Chapter 12. The Glass Embrace. The forest had become an endless corridor of glass. Mist and shadow coiled around them, blurring the line between air and reflection, between themselves and the forest's creations. Every step forward felt as though the ground itself might vanish beneath them. Jay led the way, eyes darting between the etched maps and the shifting trunks. Leah and Nina followed, trembling, gasping for breath. Every glance at the trunks revealed doubles perfect copies of themselves, some grinning, some screaming silently, all advancing steadily. We can't survive this," Leah whispered, tears streaming. Her reflection leaned out from a nearby trunk, smiling wider than any human's smile, eyes black, impossibly still. Nina's stomach twisted. "It's not just hunting us, it's replacing us. And the longer we resist, the stronger it gets." Ahead, a massive trunk loomed, larger than any they had seen, its surface flawless, reflecting a reality that hadn't yet happened. They could see themselves, or something like themselves, walking forward, smiling, calm, perfect. It was the forest's vision of who they could become if they surrendered. Chris's voice trembled from behind. It's already done with Mark and Maya. What's left of us is nothing compared to them." The forest pulsed around them, a living, breathing entity. Shadows flickered across the trunks, whispering, calling, mocking. Doubles emerged on all sides, faster,